皆様おはようございます。時間となりましたので、Select USA Beyond シリコンバレーシリーズを開催いたします。皆様お忙しい中ご参加いただきありがとうございます。米国大使館で対米投資を担当している千野と申します。本シリーズではシリコンバレーとは特徴や規模が異なる全米に広がるエコシステムをご紹介しており、本日は皆様にも馴染み深いオレゴン州とワシントン州をご紹介します。スタートアップ経験が豊富で、地域のエコシステムに貢献している素晴らしい講師をご紹介いただいたオレゴン州とワシントン州政府の皆様に感謝を申し上げます。また、日本貿易振興機構、ジェトロ東京商工会議所、日本の立協会の皆様にご講演いただき、広報のご支援をいただき、お礼を申し上げます。プログラムに入ります前に少し注意事項がございます。皆様から事前にご質問いただきありがとうございました。ご質問はレクチャーの最中でも右手の Q&A ボックスに無記名で入力いただけます。時間の都合上すべての質問に対応できない場合は個別にご連絡させていただきます。本日のウェブセミナーは録画しておりますのでご了承ください。皆様のマイクとビデオがオフになっていることをご確認ください。では、早速プログラムに始めます。オレゴン州政府駐日代表部リージョナルマーケットマネージャーのトム・ディコルチャ様にオレゴン州の概要や講師のご紹介をいただきます。トムさん、よろしくお願いいたします。
ありがとうございます。皆さん、おはようございます。お忙しい中、このウェビナーにご参加いただきありがとうございます。オレゴン州政府駐日代表部のトム・ディコルチャです。次の30分では、オレゴンのアントレプレノアと投資家からお話をいただきます。まず、始める前に、オレゴンについて簡単に紹介したいと思います。オレゴンの主要産業は、ハイテク、半導体、スポーツアパレル、食品加工、木材業です。オレゴンの主要企業には、インテル、ナイキ、コロンビアスポーツウェアがあります。もちろん、オレゴン州のビジネスコストはシリコンバレーよりも安いです。その他、オレゴン州を検討する5つの理由をご紹介します。1番、地理的利便性です。西海岸の真ん中に位置していることから、日本アジア方面への物流面においてとても便利です。ポートランドには羽田空港から直行便があります。ロス、サンフランシスコ、シアトルなどの主要な場所へ短いフライトでアクセスできます。オレゴンへ進出している日系企業は約56社あります。これらの会社は保険、コンピュータ、食品加工、半導体など様々な業界で事業を展開しています。それから、オレゴン市にある日本企業のうち約 20% が半導体関連企業です。それはなぜでしょうか。3番、オレゴンはインテルの最大の拠点だからです。オレゴンはインテルが新しい製造プロセスを開発する場所です。4番、オレゴン州ポートランド市のライフスタイルはクリエイティブな人々を魅了します。例えば、オレゴン州には独立したソフトウェア開発の強い伝統があります。オレゴン州はオライリーオープンソースカンファレンスの開催地であります。Linux OS の発明者であるライナス・トルボル氏はオレゴン州に住んでいます。そして、ウィキの発明者であるウォード・カニンハムはオレゴン州に住んでいます。5番、日本に適した生活環境、オレゴンには次のような日本のビジネスをサポートするためのリソースがあります。業界団体、文化団体、領事事務所があります。 オレゴンは親日的な州です。ポートランド日本庭園は日本国外で最も優れた日本庭園の一つです。新しい文化センターは熊健吾氏の設計です。熊健吾氏は、このデザインは比喩的な橋を意味しています。米国と日本をつなぐ建築的、文化的な橋です。東洋と西洋をつなぎ、太平洋両岸のデザイナーや職人がアイディアや知識を交換できるようになりますと語っています。それでは、オレゴン州のビデオツアーに参加しましょ
オレゴン州東部ウィラー郡にある牧場の朝は早い。ペインテッドヒルズで自然放牧された牛から取れる牛肉をトラックに積み市場へと向かう。オレゴン州は今さまざまな角度から経済成長の兆しを見せている。コンドンの町では太陽や風力などのエネルギー開発業への投資を進め、Google や Apple、Facebook 社などのサーバーへ供給しようと試みている。デシュート川沿い97号線を下るとオレゴン中部ベンド地域にあたる。ブリードラブギター社の楽器職人たちが最新のギターやウクレレを製作するため木材を吟味している。昼12時、北部フットリバー郡にある地ビール工房ではビール醸造、試飲、瓶詰めをフル回転で行っている。夕方になるとオレゴンのスポーツ愛好家たちが喉の渇きを癒しにやってくるからだ。オレゴン州西部コロンビア川渓谷からポートランドの中心部はグラフィックデザイナーや服飾デザイナー、ソフト開発業者などが一堂に会し、クリエイティブな面でも急成長を見せている。もう少し西へ目を向けてみると、そこにはインテル最大の製造施設が半導体産業と活気づけ、またナイキ本社では社員たちが革新的アイデアに思いを巡らせている。ウラメットバレーを横断する99号線を降りるとワイナリーがあり、そこではコンクール受賞経験のある上質なワインが作られている。オレゴン州南部セントラルポイントにあるローグクリーマリーではチーズ職人たちが熟成具合を見て市場に出せるか試食しているところだ。日も暮れかけた頃、コースタルレンジにあるハンプトンウッドプロダクトミルでは一日の仕事を終えようとしている。そして海辺では漁師たちが世界中の市場へ出荷するサーモンやカニなどの加工をしている。東西へ約650キロ。オレゴン州の人口はおよそ400万。エンジニア、農家、ソフト開発者、資本家、投資家、職人、起業家までさまざまな人で構成されている。一日の終わり、人々は明日をより良い日にするためそれぞれの思いや考えを分かち合う。そしてまた日は昇り、オレゴン経済の一日が始まる。
それでは、シリアルアントレプレナーであり、投資家であり、ビジネスオレゴンのコミッショナーであるカンツゴパパールさんからご挨拶をいただきます。Ken?
Thank you, Tom. Ohio gozaimasu. My name is Kant Gopalpur, and I have worn many hats in the Oregon startup ecosystem. First as an entrepreneur, and then as an angel investor and advisor to startups. I want to talk a little bit about my personal journey in Oregon. I came to Portland in the summer of 1991 as a tourist and fell in love with the city and quality of life and moved here permanently in 1992. Since then, I've been involved in several startup ventures, some successful and some not so successful. The first one was Powell's Books, which is the largest bookstore in the United States and one of the first e-commerce companies in the world. I started and led the online operations there. And our funding model, most of our funds came from the revenue from our operations. In the year 2000, I was recruited to a company called Django's, which sold music and movies. We had an e-commerce website, which I ran, and also had physical stores in several cities across the country. This company was venture funded, and our venture capital came primarily from the Pacific Northwest. In 2003, I founded a software company called Monsoon Works, which provided software to retailers to help them sell online. This company was funded by angel investors, mostly from the West Coast. We had a very rapid growth for about 5 years, and then sold to a private equity company in the year 2010. The private equity group then bought 2 other companies and merged it with our company to form Monsoon Commerce. We had offices in Philadelphia, the Bay Area, and Portland, which was the headquarters. I was president of that company and then CEO until 2013. I've also co-founded 2 other startups. One is an e-commerce company in Tacoma, Washington, and the other is a Silicon Valley-based e-commerce blockchain company. I currently am an angel investor, advisor to startups, and also a board member in several companies and organizations. I'm on the advisory board of Elevate Capital, which is a venture fund focused on minorities and women. I'm also the chair of the Business Oregon Commission, which is the economic development agency for the state of Oregon. The vitality of an entrepreneurial ecosystem is predicated on 4 key factors. I will now talk about how those relate to Oregon. One key factor is having several industry clusters. And some of the strong clusters in Oregon are software, primarily fintech and open source software related companies. With the strong presence of Intel in Oregon, semiconductors and related hardware, also key industries. Oregon is also environmentally conscious, so we have a very strong clean tech sector. With the presence of Nike, Columbia Sportswear, and Adidas in North America, apparel and wearables is also big. We also have a world-class medical university over here, OHSU, and with that, there's a lot of biotech and health tech companies. And as you saw in the earlier video, Oregon also has a lot of farmland and ranches. And so forestry tech and agricultural tech is also seeing good success. The second key factor for a successful entrepreneurial landscape is the availability of talent. We have some very good universities in Portland and the areas of the state, such as Eugene and Corvallis. The availability of great outdoor experiences and a smaller city life leads to a great quality of life, which attracts talent. And the Portland area is definitely has one of the lowest, cheapest standards of living compared to other major cities on the West Coast. All this helps us attract talent, and which is also one of the reasons some of the Bay Area companies are opening satellite offices in Oregon. Access to capital is, again, one of the most critical aspects of a successful entrepreneurial system. There has been a vast improvement in this area in the past 10 years. We have a very active angel investor and active angel groups, investing groups across the state. We have a few venture funds over here, most of whom who invest in very early stage startups. And we're also seeing that once a company gets to a bigger size, it is able to attract capital from both Seattle and Silicon Valley. And one of the reasons for that is valuations are a lot lower in Portland than they are in Seattle or San Francisco. The funds, local funds also get support from the state through the Oregon Growth Board, which invests in venture funds. The startup ecosystem in Oregon is very collaborative and people help each other a lot. There are several networking and mentoring organizations. There's several networking opportunities. Some of the Some examples are the Oregon Entrepreneurs Network, the Technology Association of Oregon, and TIE, which is a global entrepreneurial network, which also has a chapter in Tokyo. We also have several incubators which work with startups in specific key industries. I was honored to be the co-chair of the Futures Commission, which recently created a 10-year innovation plan for Oregon. I want to talk now about some of the key strategies from the innovation plan and the related action items. The first key strategy is to foster ideation. We intend to do this by, one, supporting centers of innovation excellence that leverage Oregon's existing trade sector strengths and emerging market opportunities. Two, we want to leverage and expand sources of non-dilutive capital to catalyze the commercialization of new innovations. And we intend to do this through a public-private partnership. The third action we intend to implement is to support early-stage innovation within Oregon's universities, colleges, and other research settings. The second key strategy is strengthening the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. We intend to do this by creating regional innovation hubs that will fund and incentivize collaboration to build and advance innovation-based ecosystems. We also intend to link talent with innovation efforts by getting partnership, internships, and other related programs. As I mentioned earlier, one of the key components of for the success of a startup is access to risk capital. And so the third strategy is how we catalyze access to risk capital. We intend to do this by, one, furthering the development of Oregon's risk capital stacks, aimed primarily at spurring investments in startups. Two, we want to incentivize angel investments in Oregon's innovation-based firms. And three, as the deal flow increases across the state, we want to focus efforts to drive more of the Oregon Growth Board's investments to Oregon companies. In summary, a lot of exciting developments are happening in Oregon startup space. It's a great time to be an entrepreneur in Oregon or to invest in Oregon. I invite you to come join us on this exciting adventure. Please feel free to reach out to me personally when you set up your Oregon strategy. Thank you.
次に、シラの CEO 兼共同創設者であるシャミル・カルカルからお話を頂戴いたします。カルカル CEO は、ポートランドのオンライン銀行であるバンクシンプルの共同設立者です。はい。
We are an embedded fintech platform, which means that we help developers, startups, large companies even build financial applications. Another way of putting it is we help programmers to program with money. Basically, it's a set of computer interfaces into which developers can connect and write their programs, and then use our software and our technology to manage all the different aspects of money movement, onboarding users, verifying their identity, linking their bank accounts, taking money out of those accounts, transferring it, sending it somewhere else, processing payments. All of that can be done through our platform. I co-founded a fintech startup, one of the first neobanks anywhere, called Simple, about 11 years ago. So we decided to move the whole company and moved it from New York to Portland. And so when it came to building another startup, I never really even thought about moving anywhere else. There was nothing like Scylla around. So we had to build all of our technology in-house, and it took us 3 years to build it, which is a very long time to be building technology just to get yourself launched and into the market. There's been a growth in the number of like fintech startups here, fintech processing companies, broker-dealer API platforms. And so that does make it relatively easier, I think, to sort of like find good talent. And there was some concern. We were worried about like, hey, will we be able to hire people in Portland in the same way that we could in like New York? And honestly, it wasn't a problem at all. In fact, it was a reverse, right? Like when we told people in San Fran that we were consolidating into in Portland, they were like, sold. I'm moving next week, right? It wasn't hard. And then as we grew that and hired hundreds of people, we just hired across the country and told people the job is in Portland, and they moved quite happily, actually. Whether it's you want to go skiing on the weekends or to the beach or kite surfing or whatever, there's just so much to do around here that whatever floats your boat, you'll be able to find a way to do it based out of Portland. Other places that have great quality of life typically don't have the infrastructure of a large city. It's just that Goldilocks place. It's like big, well-connected, but not so big that it becomes unlivable. You don't feel like you're, overwhelmed by the crowd here in Portland. But it does have all that you would want from a big city. It has, a startup community which is getting bigger and bigger, and I think the quality of life that you get here in Portland is really hard to find anywhere else in the U.S. And being able to just like drive up to Seattle and take is it an hour down to San Fran? I don't know. It's a very quick flight down to San Fran. I've done it many times where I've gone down in the morning and come back up by the same day and not even stayed overnight. So many things have changed. I haven't taken any flights in the last year, but I took all of those flights actually from Portland to all over the place, and being able to do it in one hop, whether it's to Tokyo or whether it's to Amsterdam, is really, really helpful. There is a surprising amount of fintech in Portland. I think the kind of the trade-off that you get, because every place is a trade-off, right? But like the trade-off that you get in Portland between quality of life, talent, and everything else the city has to offer is way better than pretty much any other place in North America. Especially if you're starting up a fintech startup in the US, Portland has to be one of the best places there is right now. I feel like people in Portland definitely go out of their way to help other local companies, and I've seen more than once now, like entrepreneurs who moved to Portland and then exited their company or sold it or left or whatever, and then started up a company and stayed right here and have no plans to go anywhere else.
So, 最後にフォンドの CEO である福山太郎さんのお話です。福山さんは Y コンビネーターの日本人初の卒業生です。フォンドの本社はサンフランシスコにありますが、会社はオレゴン州で成長しています。
こんにちは。フォンドという会社で代表を務めている福山太郎です。フォンドは米国での福利厚生の提供を行っているベンチャー企業で、Facebook、Visa、Salesforce 社などを含む数百社のアメリカ企業にサービスを提供しています。フォンドは約10年前にカリフォルニアのサンフランシスコで創業しました。IT 系のベンチャー企業や投資家が世界中から集まっていたのが主な理由でした。しかし次第に生活費が高騰し、人件費も高くなりまして、中長期の持続性に疑問を持つようになりました。そこで2018年に他の都市も検討した結果、オレゴン州のポートランドに拠点を構えることを決めました。ポートランドはカリフォルニアから近く、飛行機で約1時間半で着くことができます。IT 業界の人材も豊富で、スティーブ・ジョブスが通っていた大学もあります。生活コストも約シリコンバレーの半分ほどで生活ができて、にもかかわらず他の大都市に比べてまだまだ人材競争が少ない珍しい都市です。コロナの影響もあり、今後はさらにアメリカ内でも大都市以外での雇用が活発になると信じています。ポートランドはその点非常に魅力的な都市だというふうに思います。皆さんとポートランドでお会いできることをぜひ楽しみにしています。よろしくお願いします。
はい。オレゴンでのビジネスに興味を持っていただけましたか？オレゴン州政府は東京3人のスタッフをがいて、 お客様のお手伝いをしています。お気軽にご連絡ください。心よりお待ちしております。それでは、最後にご質問にお答えしたいと思います。
オレゴンの皆様、お疲れ様でした。では、質疑応答の方に参ります。本日のテーマでもあります、ビヨンドシリコンバレーということで、いくつか、ご質問いただいているのが、シリコンバレーをはじめ、他の地域と比較して、イノベーションエコシステムはどう違うのでしょうかという質問をいただいています。
You can look at it from two different aspects. One is from the aspect of an entrepreneur, and one is from the aspect of an investor. From the perspective of an entrepreneur, it is one of the most collaborative places. People, Shamir mentioned it in his video, people genuinely want to help each other succeed here. It's a lot cheaper here compared to Silicon Valley to hire engineers. The talent is as good. And from the perspective of an investor, it's very, very different compared to Seattle or Silicon Valley. It's small enough so you can get to hear and know about interesting startups in a much quicker manner. And as I mentioned earlier in my presentation, valuations generally tend to be cheaper in Portland compared to other areas.
ありがとうございます。では、次の質問に移ります。大きな大学と比較して、技術移転や商業化に対する支援に限界があるのではないかと思います。基礎研究を行っている比較的小さな大学は、新しい技術を生もうとしている人たちとエコシステムをどのように関わっているのですか？州や市からのサポートはあるのですか？と質問いただいています。
Sure. I think the best person to answer that would be our innovation strategist from Business Oregon, Mark Brady.
First, I am happy to have a long conversation about this with anyone who would like it. But in the interest of time, I would say I would say that our universities work together so much that collectively they're better or bigger. They seem bigger than they may individually. They each approach it differently, but together it's a collective effort that adds up to more than the sum of the parts.
ありがとうございました。ちょっと時間の都合もありますので、一旦、オレゴンの皆様ありがとうございました。では、続きまして、オレゴンから、ワシントン州にバトンタッチいたします。米国ワシントン州政府商務局日本代表事務所の、マネージャーでありますヘイディ・サルメラ様に、まずワシントン州の概要と講師のご紹介をお願いいたします。
ありがとうございます。皆様、こんにちは。ワシントン州政府商務局日本代表事務所のサルメラ・ヘイディと申します。本日のウェビナーにご参加いただきありがとうございます。すでにご存知かもしれませんが、ワシントン州政府商務局日本代表チーム所は、米国での事業拡大をご検討されている日本企業様に、情報提供しており、ビジネスを拡大する過程にで様々な支援をしている機関であります。本日はワシントン州政府商務局、本部の IT 産業担当のスティーブン・マヘシュベリや、ワシントン州テクノロジー産業協会の CEO を務めるマイケル・スラーが、シアトルの、IT 企業の魅力、またスタートアップシーンについて紹介させていただきます。また、最後に Q&A のためにお時間を取ってありますので、ぜひ最後までお付き合いいただければと思います。では、スティーブンとマイケルのプレゼンテーションに移りたいと思います。スティーブン、over to you.
Hello, everyone, and Ohio gozaimasu to our friends in Japan. My name is Stephen Maheshwari, and I serve as Governor Inslee's Director of Economic Development for the ICT sector in Washington State. On behalf of Governor Inslee and the Washington Department of Commerce, I am pleased to participate in this webinar to preserve one of the most important international relationships we can have in Seattle and in Washington State with Japan. One of the reasons that I love speaking about Washington State's tech economy is because I am a product of it, having worked at Microsoft and Amazon prior to joining the Department of Commerce. Before I talk about our tech economy, here are a few stats about Seattle's regional economy. Just Seattle alone accounts for about $370 billion in GDP as of 2019. In addition to IT and software development, our key industries include aerospace and the space economy, maritime, life sciences, health technology, and manufacturing. Our tech industry is large. Microsoft and Amazon are the two largest companies on the planet and have a $3.5 trillion market cap and are both headquartered in Washington State. But those companies are just two of 26,000 tech companies situated in Washington State. You can see on this slide some of the biggest tech companies that have a headquarters or satellite office in Seattle. In our state, tech is a $40 billion industry with over 400,000 tech workers. We are home to major players in artificial intelligence, cloud computing, big data, e-commerce, blockchain, and more. With respect to artificial intelligence, we have cutting-edge R&D. We have the Allen Institute for Artificial Intelligence, the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and many more. We have been consistently ranked as one of the fastest growing economies, having a high concentration of STEM jobs and STEM job growth. And that's because we have significant homegrown talent, with one of the largest pool of STEM graduates coming out of the University of Washington, Washington State University, and one of the highest ranked community and technical college systems in the US. And even more than Portland and Silicon Valley, we are considered the #1 hub for engineering talent, which is why so many major tech companies will set up their largest engineering office in Seattle. We are truly a global tech hub that continues to draw talent. Even in this economic climate, we are seeing remote tech workers come from Silicon Valley into Seattle. One of the most interesting data points that we have seen is that even through the pandemic, we continue to be the #1 net importer of talent from San Francisco from 2018 to 2020. And please note that they prefer Seattle over Portland. It's not just our tech companies that have done well. We are seeing a growth in venture capital investments in small and mid-sized tech startups. Seattle saw a 14% increase in venture capital investments in 2020, despite the pandemic. We also saw the creation of 11 new unicorns in 2020, which are companies that have reached the $1 billion valuation in Washington State. And even though it's my job to talk about how great Seattle and Washington State is for our tech sector, the headlines and the quotes do that job for me. In December, a $9 billion cybersecurity company moved to Washington State from San Francisco. And the CEO cites the reasons for the move as our diverse economic base, our natural beauty, and our enterprise engineering talent. And he says that there is no stronger pool of engineering talent globally than here in Seattle. Japan and Washington have a long-standing trade relationship dating back to 1791, nearly 100 years before Washington had been a state. In 2016, Governor Inslee signed an MOC, or Memorandum of Cooperation, with Ambassador Aikawa on economic trade relations, showcasing our commitment to being excellent trade partners with Japan. One example of how we partner with Japan on technology includes our Seattle, Japan Artificial Intelligence Meetup Series. We work with the Japanese Consul General Office to present artificial intelligence and technology startups in Seattle to Japanese investors and companies every quarter. During this meetup series, we had over 100 companies participate in over multiple days, including key technology and government speakers. We have held over 16 events, and the last 3 events have been virtual, reaching up to 300 attendees for our Zoom presentations. We hold these events every quarter now. We have had several successful startups expand to Japan, including the companies you see here. Companies include Aptio, Define Crowd, and Tuple, among others. We've also had companies from Japan expand to Washington as a result of this program, including Denso America and Dai Nippon Printing. So what is everyone's motivation to move here, to grow a company, and to stay? If you're considering opening an office here, consider the momentum of our economy, our incredible workforce, our low cost of electricity, which is the lowest in the US, and a government willing to pursue innovative public and private partnerships. We also have one of the best qualities of life, with weather, cost of living, and lifestyle amenities better than most states can offer. Geographically, we're located between Asian and European markets, allowing companies to tap into global customer and investor markets. On top of the benefits I mentioned before, Washington State has a pro-business tax environment. We have one of the lowest burden tax environments on the West Coast and one of the most competitive across the nation. And while we are in a period of economic uncertainty due to the global pandemic, we are continuing to focus on investment in innovation. And the state views our artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other technologies as key areas to advance our economy. If you are interested in establishing a presence in Washington State, please do not hesitate to reach out and contact myself or my team. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Schutzler, and I am the CEO of the Washington Tech Industry Association. I have been working in the technology industry for approximately 40 years, and I have been an active angel investor and an entrepreneur for the last 25. My colleague and friend, Stephen Maheshwari, just gave you a wonderful overview of the Washington State technology industry, and I'm going to go now a little bit deeper into some specific areas. So as you've already heard, we have a leading position in our state in cloud computing, IoT big data, cancer research, and machine learning artificial intelligence. The combination of Microsoft, Amazon, the Fred Hutch Cancer Research Center, and the University of Washington has created a complete ecosystem in which all 4 of these areas have really become one complete data science and computer science ecosystem. And over the last 25 years, it is this combination of these 4 areas that have led us to become ranked #1 in the United States in cloud computing, blockchain, online gaming, online retail, and many other areas. So nearly 100 years ago, we began to have a very significant engineering force in our state because of aerospace. But over the last 25 years, all of these other areas has made us ranked #1 in the United States for all of this. So I'm not going to get into a great deal of detail here because you've already heard this, but in particular, I want to make sure you just focus on the fact that blockchain, artificial intelligence, and machine learning are the centerpiece of our entire tech ecosystem. It is interesting to me that in Stephen's presentation, we didn't talk much about autonomous vehicles. We have 2 companies here in the state, Peloton and PACCAR, that are driving all of the research in interstate national trucking, all of which are being run by autonomous vehicles. Yeah. I often get asked the question, how are we the same or different than the Valley? And so what I've created for you is a chart to show you each of the 4 main tech hubs in the United States. So you heard earlier from our friends from Oregon telling you that it is much less expensive to operate in Oregon than compared to the Valley. So if you take a look at the second column, which is San Francisco and San Jose, which makes the Valley, you can see the average cost of an office in dollars per square foot is $80, and the average home price is $1.5 million, which I know is still cheap compared to Tokyo. Right, and so you can see the cost of operating an office or buying a home, or the salaries are very similar between Seattle, Boston, and Austin. We are all quite a bit less expensive than the Valley. Now, most people in the world think of the Valley as being tech because of the money. And if you look at the very top number in the second column, you see there's $195 billion of venture capital. Now, if you take a look at Seattle and Bellevue, there's only $12 billion. It seems much smaller. But here's the truth. Every company in Seattle that is worthy of an investment gets money from Seattle and the Valley and Boston. Venture capital in the United States spreads throughout the entire country. So you don't have to be in the Valley to get money from the Valley. Now, there's an interesting dilemma that we have in the United States, and I'm showing you here two sets of numbers. In 2019 was the last number of jobs reported that were unfilled of 3.7 million. And in 2019, the grand total of degrees conferred to graduates in 2019 was 250,000. So in the United States, the tech industry is creating more than 10 jobs for every new graduate capable of doing that job. This is an exciting opportunity, but also a big challenge. So my organization, as a result, focuses an enormous amount of energy on startup support and workforce development. I'd like to give you two examples. So because we have this problem of the tech industry creating 10 jobs and only one new graduate coming from universities, we have created a model using apprenticeship to help people leave a job that isn't in tech and get the training necessary to get the job in the tech industry. We have successfully taken people from old world jobs and made them software developers at companies like Amazon, Microsoft, Google. The interesting change for our society is very significant. We are taking people who were truck drivers, cab drivers, waitresses in restaurants, and other low-paying jobs, and we have now converted them into software developers in high-paying jobs. And our success in this apprenticeship model has helped us become better partners for universities to improve their internships. And we have been good partners with the state of Washington, who has helped fund this, good partners with companies like Microsoft and Amazon, who have created the jobs, and good partners with universities who are producing the students. The second area that we focus a lot of energy is in helping founders successfully build their companies. For many years, we have helped American tech companies accelerate their fundraising and their product launches. For the last 3 years, we have conducted a very close partnership with Canada and Korea to help their founders come to the United States and successfully launch their companies here in the state of Washington. We are now exploring similar programs with Taiwan and Singapore, and now most recently Japan, and we are hoping to have a good partnership with you as well. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much. I'm open to questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. では次に、皆様に短い動画を見せたいと思います。動画の後は Q&A になります。またワシントン州についてより詳しい情報を、ご希望の方は、画面に書かれている連絡先まで、ご連絡いただければと思います。それでは、動画に移りたいと思います。ご覧ください。
Dear rest of the world, it's us, Greater Seattle. And we're here to set a few things straight. Yes, we're into coffee. Yes, it rains here. And sure, we throw fish. But there's something else you need to know. We don't all wear flannel. The sun does come out here. And we're the fastest growing economy in the country. No, not that one. This one. That's right. That latte you love, we made it. The plane you flew in on, we built it. The package you ordered, we sent it. That suit you're wearing, that real estate you researched, the 10 gallons of mustard you bought, the software you used, that all started in the upper left corner. But it doesn't end there. We're curing cancer, helping with global recovery by driving health initiatives, and changing the world for the better. Because the pioneering spirit still lives here. And we're not done seeking out new horizons, but we are done moving. Because, well, just look at this place. So when the time is right, book a flight on the site we created, get on that plane we built, and join us. This is a letter to everyone with a pioneering spirit. Help us deliver it to the world.
ワシントン州と、オレゴンの、それぞれの特徴が大変わかるプレゼンテーションでした。ワシントン州の、方に質問が来ています。カンス様も、述べておりましたが、日本のスタートアップが米国で成功するのに何が一番必要とお考えですかという質問をいただいています。
Well, I think we offer a lot of characteristics in our startup ecosystem that cater to Japanese startups as well as any other startup that wants to come to Washington State. Specifically, the Washington Department of Commerce offers services to support Japanese companies that are interested in coming to Washington State. We offer free site selection services, business consultancy, and business matchmaking. And we help you connect with startups and organizations like Michael's Washington Technology Industry Association, as well as any others that can make your startup feel at home in Washington State. Many Japanese companies that come to Washington State will try to set up a small R&D office before considering moving their entire company here, which is a great way to get to understand and learn about Washington's startup ecosystem.
はい、質問が尽きないのですが、時間になりましたので、この辺で終わらせていただきます。はい、しばらくこのウェビナー形式で米国の最新情報をお届けします。次回のビヨンドシリコンバレーは、シリーズは、ユタ州をご紹介します。自然豊かなイメージが強かったのですが、若い労働力で急成長している地域の一つのようです。また今週の木曜日ですが、カリフォルニア州大気資源局によるキャップ&トレード制度のウェビナーをお届けします。日米ともに地球温暖化対策を推進している今、そのリーダーであるカリフォルニア州からお話を伺います。最後に一つだけ宣伝をさせていただきます。今年はバーチャル開催となったセレクト USA インベストメントサミットは、米国の最新動向を把握し、全米のほとんどの州政府が参加しています。また、弁護士事務所や会計事務所など専門家とネットワークを構築できるイベントです。ジェトロ様が今回特別価格設定を提供されていますので、ぜひご参加ください。では皆様、次回のご参加お待ちしております。本日は皆様お忙しいところありがとうございました。